Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Tessie and today we are going to be recreating this style. If you're new to my channel, you're welcome. If you're yet to subscribe, kindly do that and let's get right into the video. So for this tutorial, I'll be making use of a pattern paper. We're going to be cutting out the top part first. So I'll chalk my shoulder measurement divided by 2, and from that point, I'll be taking the length of my sleeve because it is a cut together. So the length of the sleeve is 8 inches. I'll be adding extra 1 inch to it for folding allowance, which is 9 inches. So from that point, I'm going to take from the shoulder to my bust point line, then from the shoulder to the under bust, and then from the shoulder to the half length. So the half length is 17 inches. I added extra 1 inch for joining allowance. So I'll go ahead now to rule my lines. So I'll go ahead now to label my lines. I have my bust point, under bust, and my waist. So for the neckline, I'm going to be making use of 4 inches. And since it is a V neckline, I'm going to come down by 6 inches and then I'll connect my neckline. So it depends on your preference. You can come down by 7 inches, 8 inches. It depends on how deep you want it to be. So for my shoulder slope, at the end of the fabric, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. Then I'll connect it back to my neckline. So after doing that, at the bust point line, I'll be placing my bust measurements divided by 4. So my bust divided by 4, I'm going to chalk it down there and then add extra 2 inches for my joining allowance. So at the underbust, I'll place my underbust measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches for my sewing allowance. At the half length, I'll place my waist measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches for my sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead now to connect my lines. After connecting my line, at the bust point line, I'll come up by 1 inch. So from the bust point line, I came up by 1 inch, and from that point, I just curve my armhole in. So come up by 1 inch and then you curve it in and then you blend your line. So we're good to go. I'll go ahead now to cut out my pattern. So I've cut out the neckline. I've cut out the shoulder area. So I'm going to be cutting out the other side. That's this side. So after cutting out this part, we are good to go with the front pattern. We're going to be drafting out the back. So for the back, we are going to be adding zipper to the back. So I'll chalk my 2 inches for my zipper allowance all the way down. Then after doing that, I'll connect it into a straight line. Then we're going to place our front pattern after that line. So I'll label this as my zip allowance. Then I'll place my front after the 2 inches for my zip allowance. So after placing my front, I'll go ahead now to cut out the exact shape. So guys, if you've watched the video to this point and you're yet to like or subscribe, kindly do that and let's get right back. So after doing that, I'm going to be cutting out the neckline for the back as well. So for the back neckline, I want it to be a V neckline as well. So you can do a round neck, it depends on your preference. So for the neckline for the back, from the shoulder, I'll come down to 7 inches. So I want the neckline to be 7 inches. From that 4 inches wideness of the neck, I'm going to connect it to the 7 inches line, and then from that point I'll connect it to my zip allowance line. So we're good to go. To eliminate zipper bulge, I'll come in here by 0.75. From that point, I'm just going to slant it all the way up. So we're good to go with the back. I'll go ahead now to cut out my pattern. I'll label this as my back pattern. So guys, the slashing is just going to be on the front part alone. So at the bust point line, I'll come down by 2 inches. And then at the under bust, I'll go down by half inch. So I'll be connecting both lines together. So what I did was at the bust point, I came down by 2 inches. At the under bust, I came down by half inch. So I'll go ahead now to connect my curve. So now it depends on how you want the curve to be. You can make it a bit deeper. It depends on your preference. I'm just going to use my pencil to sketch and then use my free hand to draw out the curve. So guys, after doing that, this is how I want it to be. So I'll go ahead now to cut out this point. So I'll be cutting this out. After cutting it out, we're going to keep it aside and then we're going to be working on the part that will be slashed. So this part of the pattern is going to be slashed. So now from the down part of the pattern, I'm going to chalk out 1.5 inches difference. So I'm chalking 1.5 inches. After doing that, I'm going to slant it all the way up. So I slant it all the way up. After slanting, I labeled my lines and then I'm going to cut open that pattern, but I won't cut it to the end of the pattern. I'll cut it very close to the end. So after cutting out my pattern, we are good to go. We're going to be working on the fabric. Guys, for this tutorial, I'm going to be making use of a Junkuso crepe and I'm making use of 3 yards. My fabric is not up to 3 yards. It's like 2 points something yards. So I'm trying to manage my fabric. So we're going to be cutting out the front part. Make sure your fabric is on fold. So I folded my fabric into two and I placed my pattern. You can see the allowance I left, 1.5 inches different. But if you want your pleating to be much, you leave like 2 inches different. So after placing my fabric this way, I'm going to cut it open. Make sure to leave your sewing allowance at the top part. So we're good to go with the front. This is what it looks like. I'm going to notch the middle point and then we're going to pleat to get back our exact measurement. So for the down part of the front, I'm just going to pin my fabric to the pattern and then cut out the pattern. So make sure your fabric is on fold. So guys, this is what it looks like as you can see for this part of the fabric. So I'm going to pleat this. Make sure you notch this point and also notch this other point as well. So I'll fold it and notch so that we'll get the middle line. After notching, I'm going to open it and then we're going to be pleating this part all the way to this point, and we're also going to pleat this other part all the way to this point. So we're good to go with the top part of the tutorial. So now for the back, I'll fold my fabric into two and place my pattern on the back. I'll go ahead now to cut out my pattern. So guys, make sure to leave your half inch for joining allowance at the shoulder. So we're good to go. I'll go ahead now to cut out facing for both the front and the back. So guys, I've cut out facing and joined the facing to the fabric and I've joined my fabric together. I also cut out facing for the back as well. I've gone ahead to join the facing to the back. So we're good to go with both the front and the back. We're going to be working on the down part of the jumpsuit. So guys, for the down part of my jumpsuit, I have my fabric folded into two, and from the waist I came down to my hip line. Then I'm connect it into a straight line. From the hip, I'll be chalking my crotch. To get my crotch is my hip divided by 4 plus 1 inch. Since it's a jumpsuit, I added extra 1 inch, that's plus 2 inches allowance. So I'll connect it into a straight line as you see me do. So from that point, I'll chalk my knee line. So from the waist to my knee is 20 inches. I chalked it down and connected it into a straight line. So what I'll do next is to take the length of my jumpsuit. So I took out my half length, which is 17 inches. From that point, I chalked the length of my jumpsuit. I labeled my lines. So at the hip line, I'll place my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch. Then from that point, I'll connect it all the way to the waist line. So I'll just connect it all the way up. And then I'll take my round lap measurement at the crotch, my round lap divided by 2 plus 1.5 inch for joining allowance. So from the hip, I'll connect my crotch. So what I'll be doing next is taking my waist measurement divided by 2 plus 1 inch. Then from that point, I'll connect it all the way down to the crotch line. So I want this to be a palazzo. So I'm just going to connect it straight down. If you do not want a palazzo, I have a detailed video on how to make a pant trouser. I'll drop the link for you to watch. So since it is a palazzo I'm working with, I'm just going to connect it all the way down. And then at the waistline, I'll come here by 1 inch. And from that point, I'm going to connect it just as you see me do. So we're good to go with the front pattern. I'll go ahead now to cut out my fabric. So guys, I have a detailed video on how to perfectly draft out a palazzo. Watch that video and you thank me later. So after cutting out the front, we're going to be cutting out the back. So for the back, I've sketched out the back. I don't want this video to be too long. So I placed my fabric on fold and chalked 2 inches all the way down for sewing allowance. And then at the top part here, I'll come up by 1.5 inches. So I'll come up by 1.5 inches, and from that point I'll connect it to the waistline. So we are good to go. I'll go ahead now to cut out the back. So the only difference between the front and the back is the allowance I added at the back pattern. So after cutting out my fabric, I'll go ahead now to join my fabric together. So I labeled my back back, and then I labeled the front as well. So I'll be joining one of the front and one of the back together. So I'll place the front on the back, right side facing each other. So guys, after placing them together, I'll go ahead now to stitch the sides using 1 inch. After stitching the side, I place them right side facing each other, and then at the crotch line, I'll stitch all the way down to the waistline for the front. So I stitch at the front part using 1/2 inch all the way to the crotch, and then from that point, I'll take my measurement, divide my waist into two, and chalk it there. I'll come down to my hip line, which is 10 inches. I'll place my hip measurement divided by 2 at that point. I'll chalk it down there, and then from my waist I'll connect to the hip line, and then from the hip line I'll just connect using 1/2 inch all the way to the crotch area. So I'll go ahead now to stitch this part. So after stitching, we're good to go. I'll go ahead now to join the flap area together. So make sure the joining part aligns together. So I'll place them together and stitch using 1/2 inch all the way down. So I'll be joining the top part and the down part together. So for the top part, I'll open up my zip allowance area. So after doing that, I'll also open up the zip allowance area for the palazzo. So I'll go ahead now to open that part as well. So I'll be joining them together. So for you to join them perfectly, just use your tape and check what you have at the waist area for the top part. So I'll check what I have there, and also check what you have at the palazzo part as well. So I'll check what I have at this waistline as well. So I have same thing. So I'll place them right side facing each other. Make sure the seam allowance area aligns, and then I'll stitch using 1/2 inch. So guys, after stitching, this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead now to attach my invisible zip on it. I'll iron, weave, and then show us the end results. So guys, this is the end result. It's really not my size. I just wait for you guys to see the fit. It really came out lovely. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop a comment. Guys, I need you guys to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. I will see you guys in my next class. I love you guys and do have a blessed day. Bye.